Good morning. How is everybody this morning? You got to love Facebook at the last minute or my internet at the last minute. It seemed it wasn't going to work, but it looks like it's good and it is working. So, as always, please feel free to ask questions. Let me know you're out there. Send me a comment. Tell me what kind of dog you have, your favorite thing about your dog. We'll chat for a few minutes before we get started. Um, so what I wanted to talk to you about this morning before we get to the whole thing, um, I have so my local puppy clients. I have a puppy package that a lot of people do. So my local puppy client for my local puppy clients, we do puppy parties. So we come out, they play together. I make sure they're appropriately matched, so they're learning the skills I want them to learn. So with puppies, when they play together, I want them to learn how to communicate with other dogs, how to build confidence. So I make sure never to let a dog be a bully, and I also make sure never to let a dog get bullied, because I'm always trying to build appropriate skills and confidence. So, um, this week I was working with a Rhodesian Ridgeback puppy, and something happened that I wanted to tell you guys about. So, we like to give a cue and we expect instant obedience. We we I think we think as soon as they don't do it immediately, they're not listening, or they need more help or whatever. So we expect instant obedience, and sometimes you just got to give the dog a moment to process what you asked and then perform the action. Sometimes it's due to the environment, but sometimes, especially with young dogs, adolescent dogs, they are growing so much, it's physically hard for them to listen. So, for example, the sit cue. Um, it takes a while sometimes for them to figure out how to organize their body to put their little tushies on the ground. Um, when you ask an inexperienced dog to sit, and this can be an adult dog. I've worked with show dogs who don't know how to sit, because with show dogs they're rewarded heavily for stand. They don't know how to sit. So you want to just, when you're working this, keep that in mind. So when you asked an inexperienced dog to sit, watch their back feet. Did they move their back feet? Most of the times they shuffle their back feet. That's them trying to listen to you, but their body not always listening. Unless you're heavily into sports or dancing, it's amazing how you tell your body to do one thing and your body does something completely different. I see it all the time when I'm teaching agility, or when I myself am trying to learn a new move, where you're like, I want my body to do this, and your body says, but I'd like to do that. So it's the same with the dog. This is where patience is important. Sometimes, in this case with the Rhodesian, I gave him a minute and he moved and he wiggled and he stepped and he moved, and finally his little butt came down to the ground and I rewarded. Um, Sometimes with a baby dog, I'll take a step back, which makes them step forward, which reorganizes their body and gives them a new opportunity to try to sit. Because sometimes just the way they move their back feet, they can't figure out how to make their knees bend. Um, And I might cue one more time, but it's always taking the pressure off. What you don't want to do is just keep repeating the cue. And what is human nature is we lean forward and give the cue while we're hovering, putting a lot of social pressure on the dog. Remember, they are doing the best they can. If the dog is looking straight at you, he is not ignoring you. He is listening and going, I have no idea what you're asking me. So then you come into, is there too much going on in the environment? Does he really not understand the cue as well as you think he does? Or in the case of puppies, is he trying, but he just can't get his body to pay attention to him? There's a lot of different exercises I do with my young puppies to help them understand how to work their body. If you check out my puppy group, Raising a Puppy in a Pandemic, it's a Facebook group. There's lots of videos of me starting to work Wicca through her body works work, so that she understands better how to use her body and at a younger age. Right now she is extremely leggy, so her legs are all over the place, and it's so funny watching her try to figure that out. Okay, so who's out there with me? Say hello, give me hearts, give me likes, say hello, and we're gonna go get started. Okay, so whether you are training a wonderful family pet or working on building a great sport dog, you you want to think about mindset, yours and your dog's. Your mindset will be a huge help or hindrance on your progress. And that's our subject today is mindset. So have you heard of power of intention? This may be a little woo-woo for you, but it's now a concept that is studied at Harvard. It has been proven to work that how you think affects everything. Hey Katie, how are you? Um, my little cutie pie Finn. Okay, so if you're interested in this concept and not only how to help your dog, but how you to affect your everyday life, check out a book called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Anker. It's based on his studies at Harvard, and it will just blow your mind on how something simple like gratitude will make a huge difference in your everyday life. But back to dog training. Okay, so for example, my clients always like to show me when their dogs, how their dogs misbehave. It's funny, not funny, but when I'm working with reactive dog clients, they're always like, you need to see it. No, I know what it looks like. I don't need to see it. But it's kind of like, and I do it too. This isn't a judgment. This is just what happens. It's, it's kind of like, look, see, my dog's really bad. I'm not lying. It's not my fault. Um, Remember, you want to be reinforced just as much as your dog does. This shifts the blame off you to your dog. And let's face it, it's easier to blame the dog than to take the blame ourselves. But the thing is, when you all you're looking for your dog is how he's misbehaving, you thank you, Christy. It is so true. You miss the dog doing the good stuff. Dogs are always doing good stuff and bad stuff. And sometimes the good stuff is hard to find all because all we focus on is the bad stuff. But there is always good stuff. And as soon as there's good stuff, there's something you can go, hey, that was it. I remember when I first had Wicca out on leash out in public, and I'd get all organized, and there's always a certain level of stress when you're taking a brand new dog out because you never know what's going to happen. And as soon as I relaxed and I was like, hey, good girl, you're walking on leash, you're on a sidewalk. She was like, oh, I'm so excited to be here with you. But when I didn't say anything and I was all thinking about, oh my God, you're pulling or you're doing this, she ignored me completely. So mindset is everything. Um, so if you've been listening to my Facebook Lives, you know I am looking to reward the dog for looking at the trigger. So we're talking about reactive dogs and how we're looking for something good. Especially at the early stages of training, you want to be pretty quick. The dog looks, you reward. It's hard. The clients can't help themselves. They are so waiting for the dog to react. They miss the dog not reacting because they're like, see, he's going to react. I know. I know he is. But it's a mindset thing. They don't believe the dog can do it and they set themselves up to be right. Whether you think you can, there's a famous quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are right. When you are ready to believe your dog can do it, then you will be looking for that sweet spot when the dog looks and doesn't react. Every dog I've ever worked with, there is this pause before they react. And that is what you want to reward because you start to interrupt that connection. But there's always a pause. The dog, it's amazing, but the dog never goes straight to see dog react. It's always see dog, pause, react. Um, Does anybody have any questions on that? Has anybody experienced that or know what I'm talking about? I'm enjoying my cold coffee. It is hot here today, and I love my cold coffee. Okay, so we're going to keep going. It's not just us that have a mindset. Dogs have them too. Dogs have triggers that change their state. And you can change these states to benefit your training. In the perfect world, you start to build these states right from puppyhood. I do a lot of rewarding when puppies focus on things. We're back to talking about chasing and stuff like that. But I was thinking just now, we do a lot of work with my friends Jack Russell McKinley, and Wicca loves McKinley. She sees McKinley, she loses all her training. All she wants to do is go over and play. So it's a great opportunity for us to train. But that is her mindset, where if you have a dog who's fearful of dogs, the minute they see a dog, they go into a fearful state. She goes into a happy, happy state. Okay, so right now I'm working on Wicca and Robins. Whether on or off leash, if she focuses on a robin, I at least praise if I'm far away, and if I'm close, I'll go over and reward her. Today, it was the same thing. We were walking down a trail and a bunch of birds flew up and she stood there and watched them. I was totally like, go girl, what a great dog. The reason for this is, remember the ODR game I've been talking about the last few Facebook Lives? Observe, don't react. I want to start that right from puppy. The robin is just another opportunity to reinforce this behavior. I want to build this right from the get-go. The concept of observe, don't react will serve you over and over as your dog grows up and all the drives kick in. For example, the run drive of Siberian Husky. Siberian Huskies, I used to have one, and it made me laugh. He wasn't leaving me. It just took him a kilometer to realize I wasn't with him, where most dogs would never go that far because their invisible leash is stronger. The prey drive of a Jack Russell, or their overly friendly drive of a Labrador who feels he needs to visit with everybody he sees. I know that in a couple of months, Wicca's herding prey chase drive is going to kick in. And I've seen it a couple of times where when she was 8 weeks old, she'd look at the bird and walk away. Now she looks at the bird and stays looking at the bird. The next step will be she'll look at the bird and chase the bird. I want to start interrupting that behavior chain now, not after she's chased the bird a whole bunch and that chase behavior, which is so rewarding, has been heavily reinforced. One day I had the luck of being able to do that. There was 4 squirrels playing in a tree, running up and down, and we just sat there quietly and watched them, and I rewarded her, and it was awesome. So talking about mindset for the dog, if you go walking down the street every day and there's a squirrel tree, now he's going to start to get excited as you approach the squirrel tree. You're going to start to get stressed as you approach the squirrel tree, holding onto the leash tighter and tighter. So you see how the mindset starts to take over. And if you're worried about it, I am teaching her not to react and chase robins. That isn't affecting her chase drive when I need it or when I want it and when I'm going to train it, such as chasing me in agility and, for example, herding. Yes, yes, this is exactly, Christy, this is exactly how we're going to work through your dogs not chasing your guinea fowl. So I want my dog to so now we're going to talk about stimulus control. So stimulus control means the sight of a bird it triggers chase. Stimulus control is the dog understanding not to chase. Ideally without you having to say anything, but if they go to chase, you're like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh yeah, sorry. So they're still mentally in their head enough to be able to resist that chase. So who has this problem? Whose dog chases squirrels? Anybody want to comment on problems they have like this, where their dog's mindset is now they see a tree and they run over to it because there might be a squirrel on it? Yeah. So the other problem that happens when we see the squirrel tree is we grab the dog's leash and we pull back. As soon as you pull back, you're activating opposition reflex. I use opposition reflex all the time when I'm training agility because it makes the dog drive harder. But looking at dogs that you could look at front door manners, dogs that want to say hello to people, dogs who pull on leash. What do? We pull back because we're trying to stop them from going forward. The problem is, as soon as you pull back, you engage the opposition reflex, which means as soon as somebody pulls back at me, I'm going to pull forward. Remember the Get It game we talked about a couple of Facebook Lives ago? That is how I get rid of the opposition reflex and make them understand when I hold your collar, you have to stand there calmly and watch the environment, whatever the environment is. I may then release you to the environment if that's something I choose to release you to, or I may not. But when you're pulling and swimming and front feet off the ground, I'm never going to release you. So that behavior never gets reinforced. Because again, this is another mindset, right? You touch their collar, they're instantly engaged. I want you to take a moment and picture yourself going for a walk with your dog, or picture yourself out in the yard. Are you smiling? Are you relaxed? Are you enjoying the day? Or are you dreading it? Are you worried? Are you paranoid that something bad's going to happen? Are you tense? Are you holding on for dear life? That's your mindset. You want to manage your dog's environment so that when you go out, you're calm and happy and looking forward to the time together instead of stressed and about to react because your dog's going to react. For example, my puppy is 5 months old. It has definitely been, there's good parts and there's bad parts. Usually it's I manage and then I relax the management, and then she starts doing stuff that makes me crazy, and then I increase the management. So this week what happened was twice she decided she didn't want to come in the house when it was time to come in the house. I see this a lot with my clients. She's 5 months old. It's very typical of the age where they start exerting more independence and doing whatever they want. So my solution to that is she's been on leash for 3 days. You know what? I get to reward her. We're happy. We're enjoying ourselves instead of me getting more and more, oh, I let you out, but I don't know if you're going to come. Now I'm worried about it. Now I'm pulling out cookies when I shouldn't be. When I put her on leash, she's like, walks around nicely. We get to practice our recalls because she's going to come every time she's on leash. So that's it. It's setting, you have control of what your mindset's going to be. You constantly have to set it up to be successful. Okay, I am going to finish up this talk. Oh, hold on, Kitty. Let me see what you said. Finn gets excited when people walk towards us when we're out. Yes, post game, now called ODR game, is exactly how you want to work on people walking by. And in fact, I would go out somewhere where a bunch of people walk by and aren't going to say hello. Because if every time somebody, like if you do this on the street in your neighborhood, every single person will eventually finish with saying hello to your dog. It's really hard to convince people not to say hello. So no matter how calm he is, he eventually gets reinforced for saying hello. And the problem is we usually can't keep them calm for that last 2 feet. Instead, I go places where people are more likely to just walk by my dog and ignore him. So he gets used to 100 people walking by. Then when the person actually stops and comes to say hello, he has so much history of them walking by and him being well behaved. It's much easier for him to control himself. So go set up in front of like a supermarket doorway or anywhere where you can consistently get a stream of people who are busy and not as likely to say hello. With the tractor, is he being startled or is he excited to go see the tractor? Knowing Finn, I would guess startled more than excited, but message me back, answer me back. Okay, I'm going to finish this talk up with a toxic mindset that is so pervasive in the dog world and so damaging to the dog-human relationship. Sadly, this mindset is still popular and overused as a reason for everything. The mindset I'm talking about is dominance and alpha and making sure you're being dominant, making sure you're being alpha. I've been a professional dog trainer for 20 years. I am happy to say that the alpha dominance mindset is less prevalent than it was when I started. But I remember my first dog and spending time trying to figure out if my dog was being dominant. And I feel so bad when people say to me, "Oh, my dog's being dominant," because that language puts us into a defensive state. So back to my very first dog. My very first dog was an Akita. And I did piles of research before I got him. And everybody said, oh, an Akita's not for a first-time dog owner. But I still really wanted an Akita, so I got him anyways. So there was always a little bit of, oh gosh, don't let me screw this up. But I was very lucky. He was a wonderful dog, and was just a great addition to our household. But anyway, so I was a little worried he was dominant because that at that time everybody was like, "Oh, watch it! It's an Akita. It's going to be dominant." My Akita would stand after dinner. My Akita would stand on the other side of the coffee table. Yes, we ate dinner in our living room and bark at us. And then I remember discussing with my husband, "Do you think he's being dominant? Is this dominant? I don't know. Are you sure? What should we do?" Um, and I remember that I we weren't sure, right? And if you read the books, the old dog training books, the dominance thing is crazy. Like stuff, I've got a book that it says, pee in your dog's dinner, because that way he'll know you're dominant. My golly. I think most dogs would like pee in their dinner. They're dogs, they're weird. Anyways, looking back, I see how silly and useless this way of thinking was. Yukon was barking at us because every night after dinner, I would get up and take him for a walk. And I would probably procrastinate as long as I could. And then he'd bark at me and I'd get up and take him for a walk, reinforcing the barking behavior. Now I understand if I'd waited for him to lie down and then got up and took him for a walk, he would lie there quietly till I was ready to go for a walk. Now, being an Akita, this behavior never became a real problem. If it was one of my border collies, yeah, this could be. Now I have the dog screaming at me as soon as I took my last bite. But being an Akita, it really wasn't that bad. The thing was, he wasn't being dominant. And thinking he was being dominant would not have helped me solve the problem and probably would have caused me to get up and correct him to make sure I wasn't losing my alpha position. So even though the theory has been recognized as not being relevant anymore, it still comes up on a regular basis from clients. Let me give you a little history on the theory. The original wolf studies that studied pack theory, that came up with pack theory, were based on captive wolves. When captive, humans or wolves will establish a hierarchy. Think of a board meeting. There's a hierarchy. Think of a team sport. There's always a hierarchy. It just naturally happens. That doesn't mean that hierarchy is cemented. It's fluid. In a new situation, the hierarchy will change. Now, modern wolf studies are done on wild wolves, and they have discovered their family units, very similar to humans. Two wolves get together, they have babies. When the baby's sexually mature at approximately 2 years old, they they move apart, they disperse, and then find mates and create new family units. Again, very similar to humans. Now, dogs are not wolves, but they are similar. The timeline is just different. Dogs reach sexual maturity about 5 months. This is when everybody starts having recall issues because the puppies lose that need to stay with you and start to wander away. Before the 5 months, puppies want to stick around because that's how they stay safe. At 5 months, they start to want to investigate their world and their invisible leash starts to stretch. This is also how Mother Nature prevents inbreeding because they wander away, find other puppies to breed with other than their litter mates. Think of teenagers. I have a 12-year-old son who is now, especially during COVID with his diminished social activities, he wants company and he wants to be with me or my husband 24/7. And much as I love that and appreciate him wanting to spend time with me, part of me is looking forward to him being a few years older and having a little more independence and sitting quietly in his room and not talking incessantly about the latest video game. But I also appreciate how I'm going to totally miss that when he gets a little older. Anyways, back to the why I started this topic. Dogs are not pack animals, therefore there is no alpha and there's no omega. Of course, there are different personalities. That means there are dogs that are driven, meaning they will push for what they want. And then there are dogs who aren't driven, meaning they're like, meh, I don't care so much. And of course, there's everything in between. So what does this have to do with mindset? If you say your dog is trying to be dominant, your mindset becomes defensive because there is fear that you are not dominant enough. The language puts your brain into fighting for dominance, which usually leads to harder, more corrective training and battling so you can make sure you stay dominant. Now, if we get rid of that word and just concentrate on training, basically your dog does this behavior, you want your dog to do this behavior, and what do you have to do between those two behaviors to accomplish that, right? What do you have to train? What do you have to manage? What do you have to change? It takes the battle out of it. This doesn't put you on the defensive. It puts you on the offensive, proactive, creating a plan. Sure, there's going to be failure, but that just means you come up with a new plan. I do this every week with Wicca. We look at what's going on. We look at what's happening, what I like, what I don't like, what I don't like. What do I have to manage? What do I have to train? What I do like, okay, we'll keep going. So that doesn't, where if I was like, oh, she's not coming because she's being dominant, I'd be yelling at her. It would just be a totally different mindset. This training mindset lets you use the tools at your disposal to get what you want. We're going to do an example of front doors or whatever door you use to go out to walk your dogs. This is a very, oh, I make my dog sit at the door because I don't want him to be dominant. Honestly, your dog bulls you out the door because what happens when they're puppies is they put their nose on that crack between the door, and as soon as you open it, they go out. So you're heavily reinforcing it, and this becomes a behavior. And if they're that driven type of not physically sensitive type of dog, they will then take you out at the knees as soon as you open the door. But let's say somebody comes over and says your dog is being dominant. You better get that under control. Your dog is being dominant. Now you go into a state of fear. Instead, let's talk about what a training mindset would look like. What can we do to teach the dog to stop bowling people over at the door, to stop pushing its way out? How about a sit? Okay. So now we start building behavior, start building value, start putting money into that sit bank. So you walk to the door, you ask your dog to sit. Can he sit at the door, or is he so excited because he might get let out he can't? Fine. Then I start 10 feet away. Can he sit at the door, or can he sit 10 feet from the door? Awesome. I reward that till he can sit next to the door. While I am training this to not constantly practice the behavior I'm trying to get rid of, I will use a different exit. So now I ask my dog, can he sit at the front door? And I'm rewarding him for sitting. Great. Then the next step is, can he sit at the front door when I put my hand on the doorknob? Most dogs will be like, no. So you got to do that a few times. Then the next step is, can you sit while I open the door an inch? I would have a leash on the dog as soon as I start opening the door. So if he's like, I'm going out the door, you can just stand on the leash and you stop him. So there's your management. And you keep doing this till you can open the door wide. And then you can put in other challenges to prove this behavior. Like, can you walk out the door? Can someone else walk up to the door? Can someone else walk by outside? All these things are building value for the sit. So now when you walk up to the door, you put your hand on the doorknob, the dog sits. Is he being not dominant? No, he's just trained. So watch that when your brain goes to that dominance mindset. Okay, so Katie, yes, with the tractor, he startles and wants to run. So you've got to be careful with people. I'm assuming with people, Finn is excited and wants to see them. But with the tractor, he's scared and wants to run away. So I would try to give him more room with the tractor. You need to find a construction site. And that way you can work the tractors that are moving all the time, all the heavy equipment, and be far enough away that he can start to not startle. What I'm thinking is, if he goes to run and then you reward him, he's already made the choice to run away and it may not be as effective. You've got to take him far enough away, ideally, that he gets a little worried, but doesn't actually startle to run. And that might be, you start with a tractor that's parked, so the sight of the tractor isn't a problem. And then you can start, if you're on the road, you can start rewarding as soon as he looks at that tractor from 100 feet away, and reward the whole time with your hand in his collar as that tractor goes by. There's going to be enough cookies in by the time the tractor gets close that he shouldn't startle. Give that a try and let me know how it goes. Okay, so Christy, Eric and I need to change our mindset sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. With your guys, it's hard because when they're finally quiet, you're just like, nobody move. They're finally quiet. Um, Finding ways to create quiet, and we've been talking about that, and we'll talk about that more this afternoon when I talk to you. Finding ways to create quiet makes you not as worried about getting quiet. But remember, they're finally quiet. This is when you want to take them out. That's what you're trying to reinforce. So, yeah, it's hard, but I would be, when they're quiet, let's go. Okay, so to wrap up, remember that how you approach each training session will greatly influence your results. We all have bad days. If I'm having a bad day, I work on something stupid easy. I will work on sits with a dog who totally knows how to sit, but I might work on sit, let me touch your collar, or stuff like that. Challenge, you can challenge the dog, but do very tiny challenges where your brain doesn't have to be at full power. That way, your dog learns to work with you when you're not in the happiest of moods, which is good because real life is sometimes you're in a mood. And your dog, it's always good to build value, to add, to do easy stuff and give a lot of cookies for not hard work, because sometimes we work our dogs a little too hard. And this, especially if you're working a dog sport like agility or something, it's good to just play simple stuff. Like I'll go out and do jump grids, which are just jump, jump, jump. Not a lot of thought process for me, and the dog gets heavily rewarded and loves them. For a young dog, I may just walk around the yard on leash and play name game. That's it. Find something that's super easy that you're going to go out and be successful for both of you. This is true if I'm in a bad mood, or if I've had bad training sessions for whatever reason. I will make some super easy training sessions that build a lot of value for working together. Okay, at the same time you are teaching, we did that, and a good day. Okay, if you are interested in doing some training with me, I offer both in-person and students online through video courses, live chat, phone calls, video chat, and video review. Whether problem solving or starting off a new puppy, I offer a variety of programs. Our next Facebook Live will be Friday, July 24th at 10 a.m. Our next Facebook Live will be choices. Your dog understanding choices. In the perfect world, for a dog to learn, there has to be a choice point, a point where he makes a choice. If we control everything, it's much harder for the dog to understand what we want. But setting your dog up so he makes the choice you want is the skill. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. Any questions? I'll stick around for about 15 minutes and answer any questions. If not, have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend, and we will see you next week. Thank you very much for joining me. Bye.